We know what AI is doing and we know what government needs to happen. My time in government was how can we make it more efficient, how can we make it more effective, and how can we make it more accountable? And we got an opportunity here to make this all happen. So my first question really to all of you, talk to us about what AI is doing in your neck of the woods and how can we bring it to make it more efficient in that manner?
I'll start, okay. Really appreciate the question. I think certainly when I started back, and I'm not an IT professional, I am an operator working in field operations. Most days I'm wearing a uniform. Today I got to dress like a human being, so I was excited about that. Back when I started in the late 1900s, the late 1900s, we did a lot of manual targeting using green screens. And to see where we are today, going back a couple of years, in building out rules to help us target through all of the data that we have, and to see what our officers and our frontline personnel are able to use today with AI ML. We've been probably 10 years starting back 2015, 2016 with predictive modeling and helping us identify anomalies in some of the travel data that we had. And we see these algorithms now helping us today identify things like fentanyl coming across our southwest border, but also working on building anomaly detection algorithms for non-intrusive inspection technology that thankfully Congress supported us in significant investments. And as we deploy these pieces of equipment across the southwest border, knowing that the number of scans we're going to be seeing is growing exponentially, now we have artificial intelligence, machine learning, helping us detect those anomalies because it's not something we could staff our way out of. But I think also, leveraging automation and AI and helping us sort through the data today, and not just when we're talking about either passengers or cargo, but even in the workflows that we have because of the vast amounts of personnel that we have, identifying problem sets and predicting those anomalies when it comes to scheduling personnel. 67,000 give or take, employees in Customs and Border Protection, 34,000 in the Office of Field Operations. So just amazing opportunities for us to remove administrative burdens from the people in CBP so that we can do what we do best. And I think most importantly, our frontline personnel, which is to talk to people, determine intent, or search things that we know that's going to be meaningful for our processes.
The one thing I learned going down the border that's very interesting, especially a little different today than it was a few years ago, but the sophistication, because you have such a broad span of area, putting the right workforce at the right time, but the sophistication of people were doing where they would bring a lot of women and children one place, so you would utilize the number of your employees while they were running the drugs someplace else. So in the AI world, does that enhance where you can place people and where predict what was coming through?
Oh, absolutely. Certainly with the voluminous data that we have, like on prior travel histories, prior seizures, the irregular migration. And today we're in a very good place with the support of the administration and really being able to mitigate that with policies and decisions that have been made in the last several months. But we can't take our foot off the gas for exactly that, because our adversaries, and transnational criminal organizations, the cartels, the foreign terrorist organizations, they are always looking for the next way to beat us at what we're doing. So leveraging AI really to help us identify those anomalies or trends before they become problematic, but absolutely, in assigning personnel where we see the greatest threat. And it's layered. I mean, the AI, the automation is part of it. We have the intelligence, the threat streams, the experience of our personnel, our most valuable resource.
Wow, thank you for the work you do. Now, Greg, you're Chief Technology Officer at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. So you've watched this AI phenomenon grow. You watched the predictability and the others. What are you finding in the labs that you see for the future, the need and desire?
I think at the Lawrence Livermore, we kind of break it into two chunks. We've got our R&D half, and we've got our operations half. And Lawrence Livermore, we got like a lot of PhD scientists on a square mile, and we kind of run a small city. So the way we're kind of trying to break it down is make our operations more efficient than they've ever been, so we can actually put more stuff in the R&D. on the R&D side, we're trying to actually take experiments that maybe previously took weeks, months, years to do, and make it more agile, speed, go through the cycle, and from all of the good ideas, down select, and be able to go through and turn the crank a lot faster. So we just basically get a lot more science output. So that's what.
How much has it shrunk it? Because it gives you the pre-prediction and the ability to do, on a testing model, to do something much faster?
Well, I'll say we're at the very lead edge, as it was talked about during the intro, right? This is all new. This whole thing exploded very recently. So I think we're at the very lead edge of the journey, but that's the desire. So in some places, we're actually trying to deploy it. We've got one of the things we're doing with C3 is our National Ignition Facility, and we're actually trying to speed through and do more experiments. Like, for instance, for our big laser facility, double the amount of experiments we could do in a year. And each one is very, very complex, takes months to plan. And if we can cram more of that into a time cycle, it's better for everybody.
And you've seen that scale just continue to shrink it all the way through?
Well, it's shrinking some. I think we want to shrink more, but it's early on. And what it mentioned during the intro was this sort of data wrangling, right? Right now, one of the things we have to put time into is getting all the data together. It's a lot of sort of federation of data. Some of the data hygiene wasn't what it should have been over the years, and this whole AI craze has sort of highlighted the importance of data hygiene, need to know type things, and putting it in one place so you can actually look across a very broad span of what's going on, sort of operations, CBP, look at lots and lots of things you otherwise wouldn't have been able to look at in one place.
Now, knowing you're a national lab and others, does it enhance the ability on the focusing that there's things you focused on that was actually a waste of time in a process that this is ideal, this part we thought was very important, but it didn't need the time that we put to it?
I think that's what's end up going to be happening, right? Right now, again, I think we're trying to get some things going right now. It's, the time will tell. There's a lot of confusion right now, I'd say, with things.
What do you mean by confusion?
I think there's a hesitancy to use some of this because, like, sort of need to know type rules. At Lawrence Livermore in particular, we do a lot of unclassified stuff, but then we also do a lot of classified things. And right now there's like hesitancy because, like, abundance of caution on putting all this data together and what we call sort of like the mosaic effect. Put too many pieces of unclassified data together and all of a sudden you get classified data and you go to places you don't want to be. So I think there's a abundance of caution right now, and that's creating some confusion on of all the options we could do, which ones are viable, which ones make sense, which ones are going to get somebody into trouble. And then also I'll build on this. It would be easier because we do a lot of stuff on unclassified, but again, a lot of stuff on the classified side. And as was mentioned in the intro, there's all these vendors, all these solutions, everything's cloud-based now almost. And that's still a transition we're going through where we still like to run, we actually run big computers on site at Lawrence Livermore. And that's kind of near and dear where we can actually control where our data is, what processing happens. And this whole transition period where there's a lot more stuff in the cloud and not all the vendors are like vetted to do some of the work that Lawrence Livermore cares about.
Now I want to ask you one more question, Greg, and then I'm going to go to you, Major General, because it kind of plays to both of you. I've watched President Trump put this new executive order, was it 14027? Places that, look, we got a big deficit, so how can we save money and be more efficient and get the taxpayer usage there? This whole talk, which even Tom brought about, off the shelf. I watched in government so many times, well-meaning, we go out to bid and we're going to recreate a program. And so we get into it for a number of millions of dollars that we're going to solve this system. And we realize when we're into it, we're screwing up. But we're already into it for a few million, so we got to put more into it until we finally admit that we're billions into it, that it didn't work, and we got to scratch it off. This off the shelf, and I think that's where C3 AI is unique, off the shelf, but it still personalizes it to it. Have you found that at an advantage or others in the lab or past programs that.
No, I think we're certainly finding an advantage, but there's actually sort of a downside too to do some of these things more efficiently. One of the things we're looking at is doing more experiments, but it turns out, like in a environment where you're making hamburgers, you want to make more hamburgers. If you make more hamburgers, you make more revenue, and then you can actually take that revenue and invest it into the automation. For places like the lab, that in some sense has like sort of a fixed revenue stream, right? If you take experiments and then all of a sudden you can double or triple the amount of experiments you run, you might actually need more money to run more experiments because you're doing them so much more effectively. Right, so that's one of the things we're going to have to sort of wrap our heads around. What's the downside of being more efficient? You can do a lot more stuff. Some of those things require more investment.
So, Speaker, I would just chime in and say
Yes.
that the premise of the core of your question is that we don't have to own it to benefit from it, right? And so, as my colleagues have talked about on the panel, what we want to do is look at how do you put data to work to make missions stronger, i.e. whether it's optimizing an acquisition pathway, whether it's quickly assessing where there are already existing capabilities inside the federal government, so I don't have to reinvent that, right? I don't have to own it to benefit from it. But I want to go back to your core question about where we in defense see really AI adding really mission value. Too much to Diane's point, we're seeing that in the area of predictive maintenance, and I think you talked about these large-scale, complex things that are going on. For us, I think about something like KC-46 Atlas that I want to just spend a few minutes talking about. This is the advanced tanker logistics and analysis system that we're working together with MetroStar, C3AI. You heard about some of the capabilities this morning. We're working together with Spectra and Parade to build an end-to-end prototype so that we can do, Speaker, exactly like you talked about. How do we make sense of the vast stores of KC-46 data that's coming off those platforms, terabytes of data, and drive that into mission value, as Tom talked about earlier? How do you do that, and how do you do it quickly? So we are seeing that. We're really thrilled to be a part of that process. I hope to talk about this a little bit more on the panel. But what we see is our customer, much like Tom talked about, we're seeing our customer respond very quickly to that, saying, we want more of it. We're pleased that the program office has moved forward in a creative framework. And so what we're looking forward to doing is scaling and validating that capability, not to just do this across a couple of aircraft, but we want to do it, as you just saw, across the entire fleet. Imagine a world, Speaker, where you can actually model the entire tanker fleet on demand in real time. That's the world we need to get to.
That was so critical when we watched that video, just the ability of the flow of where the fuel will be at the time in the cradle. But there's another place where I met Tom early, long before I was out of office. I met him in the place of, in the military, here we are as policymakers investing to buy a lot of airplanes. And in a time of need, you have this fleet and they'll say, I got 100 planes, but only 40 of them can fly at this moment. They say, how can that possibly be the case? They say, well, a part's broken on different ones. This is where C3AI came in and said we could pre-predict, even though this part is working today, that it's going to break at this certain time period, fix it ahead of time, where we got 80% of our planes ready to fly. Right. And that's the pre-prediction, if you could expand out what you've been doing in this.
I would love to. I spent 32 years in the United States Air Force. I joke and tell my kids I left my afro out there on the flight line. Tough business, real tough business. When you're generating sorties and mission general crawls over there, you know what it's like. It's tough business. I spent the vast majority of my career answering, I would call it circa 2019 question or 2015 question, what happened? To your point, Speaker McCarthy, what happened? That's reactive. AI allows us to be predictive, right? I want to understand what might happen, to Greg and Diane's point. What might happen if I did border flows, right? So what we do now is our approach is, how do we use that data to understand, get insights across these vast stores of data about, for example, before an aircraft lands, I want to understand what condition is as it's coming back to the flight, back to the runway. What is the condition ahead of time so that I can start to activate supply chains to get ahead of those parts, That's the world we live in now. The problem is it's still in silos. Look, everybody on this panel has this problem. You heard Tom talk about it earlier. We have too much data, it's too slow, and it's too siloed. So we have got to move that to a place where we can take advantage of this democratized data and, Speaker, to get at what might happen. What might happen, and you see partnerships forming to do that, and customers voting with their money and with their mouth saying you're adding value by doing that. I'll pause here.
Yeah. Diane, if I come back to you, so AI is providing you data, but how do we interpret the data, and do you need AI to take it all the way down to the level of the field person to help them make decisions?
It's a great question.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think too the point that Major General made earlier, the idea that with all of the information that we can take terabytes of data and put it at the fingertips of a frontline, whether it's one of our officers, our agriculture specialists, or our import specialists. Again, the threat landscape being what it is, biological threats, nation-state activity when it comes to undermining the economy or the flows of fentanyl or irregular migration. If we can have, the frontline personnel making the most informed decision possible. Again, what used to take me when I started as a targeter, multiple systems, if I could get 2 or 3 solid targets.
Explain what it was like from the beginning when you started and what it is today, the information you have and the options that you have.
Going back, it was back when we had the green screens. It would probably be about 6 or 7 systems worth of research just to find a handful of solid targets in a day. Today, certainly we have things like a super query that canvasses a number of different systems, but also I think what's really relevant to the discussion, Tom was talking about it earlier, like the information sharing that we have with other government partners today. And even some of our foreign, law enforcement partners, that we can take all of that information and really aggregate it and collate it and put it in a really operational, decision-making format so that our frontline, we have records of individuals or commodities or companies that we're already looking for. And these are the knowns. These are the gimmies, the easy ones. We have a general sense with the data that we have in advance of something arriving to the U.S. or even being exported from the U.S., what's going to happen with that if it's known. It's the unknowns that this, kind of automation with the data and really layering in the intelligence and their experience is going to give them the best opportunity to rule out the things that aren't threats. I think we don't give our frontline enough credit for ruling out the things that just aren't threats. They've mitigated it, or determined that it was, legitimate or benign, and give them the information to really focus on those unknowns, whether it's, the individuals traveling for nefarious purposes, whether it's, that small package that's coming through that they have to open because there's potentially precursors in there.
Because you've got a key job, because you've got to keep the threats out, but you've got to keep the economy flowing. And you can't have everything a long line like everyone's a threat. Is the AI assisting in that so you can keep the economy if you look at Texas and just going across the different bridges, that's essential for those economies to move.
Absolutely. I think, again, going back to helping us rule things out, right? Again, we've been using user-defined rules for years, predictive models, but really they were just telling us there might be something. And AI puts us in the same space, but also the information to make that informed decision about, all right, now do I want to look at that? I think, we're looking at, models that will help because we see a trap. You work at a place like JFK, you could see people from 50 different countries in one day, depending on what shift you're working in, and remembering what those threat streams are, right? If that information is now kind of highlighted, all right, this region, this threat, locally, what the information to be able to let them do what they do best, which is have unscripted conversations. That's where we need them applying, their
it gives
skills.
Them decision making. Now, Major General, you look like you were nodding a lot about decision making and empowering.
The point I want to amplify is this whole issue of cultural trust that you're getting at. I certainly mean when I hear your question. We can have AI and AI models, but if we don't address clear-eyed the cultural trust issue that I know many in this audience understand, and it is that let me just talk maintainers. Maintainers don't trust anything they can't see and touch, period. So to ask them to adopt an AI algorithm is going to take time. And to bring it to your point, Speaker, from the AI algorithm to the point of use is a journey. I would suggest to you that my lived experience is in this space and industry, it requires, as we know, side-by-side validation. How do you get those women and men at the edge to trust this? They have to actually do it. Trust is earned. Let's just cut to the adage. Trust is earned, not given. And what we find, and I have my colleagues in the audience, we just were on the phone last night with a group of maintainers from Mildenhall Air Base. And while we have all this fancy stuff, they need to elephant walk that road to trust around these models so that it becomes a part of their toolkit, just like a wrench is. And it takes time. So your question is spot on. This issue of culture of trust is real. And I think for us practitioners and really skilled practitioners at the PhD level, data scientists, we have to be careful not to forget that our sons and daughters on the edge don't trust this. In fact, the video, we all laughed a little bit, but the video points out, we all think this is like futuristic and Tom Cruise and Minority Report. I mean, so we have to be very careful not to speed past trust in this area. That's where, as I wanted to resonate with the question you asked around, how do you get it to the edge? I would say little by little, where it makes sense.
And do you have, though when you build this, the one thing I do love about C3 AI, they do have an off-the-shelf, but they adapt to the location they are. And when you're building it and you provide those users to actually have ownership on the development of it, that I think brings the trust in. Because one thing I was going to touch with you, Greg, is, look, Livermore has some of the most high intelligence, educated people around. Are they going to trust somebody else's work?
Well, that's an issue. And I think the other thing that I've seen building on your comments is it isn't just like the computer scientists that are into this now, or the people that have been working on ML stuff for like their whole career. It's across everything. It's people compare AI to like sort of like the birth of the internet, all those type of things. But I've seen more people interested in AI across all the segments of the workforce. If something I've never seen working in IT for a long time, the lawyers are interested, the people who do facilities are interested, everybody's interested, not just the deep science folks. And when it comes to like the trust issue, there is huge misunderstanding right now. People think just magic, and there's some actually science behind it. So I think what we're seeing now is there is a lack of trust because there's sort of a not understanding of everything. What we're trying to do at Livermore to get past some of that is actually sort of upskill the whole workforce and take people that normally we would have never reached out and tried to like sort of upskill for like a thing, a new IT thing's coming on. And this is the thing where I think our whole staff, we're actually trying to like take them up a notch. We're not going to get everybody to like a PhD scientist, computer scientist, AI theory, things like that. But wherever they are, we're trying to take it up a couple notches. So there's a reasonable expectation of what can happen, what should happen, what can be trusted, what can't be trusted. Some of these stories right now that people hear in the news about vibe programming, kind of horrify people quickly. And we're trying to get people through that so they can understand what's real, what isn't.
Okay, so we got an audience here, I assume, are looking for ways that AI could help them assist to be more efficient in the job, to provide something. But how difficult, if you found in it, the procurement itself, when you find something that can work, when you're dealing in government, but government puts a scale or parameters around that you got to meet something special, but I see something I'm willing to take a risk that may cost less, that's off the shelf and built like that. What were some of your experiences, General, on trying to get, or Greg, coming through?
So, look, acquisition pathways don't match mission need right now. And I'm really pleased to see the administration has jumped all over this. We, not only with words, but actually funding reallocation. I want a world where CRADAs, OTAs, SIBRs are more the norm than the exception, because I think that breathes and it reinforces innovation. To your point around when you see something, you're willing, obviously nobody wants to take inappropriate risk. But where there are needs, the only innovation that I would suggest that I captured and was able to do as the logistics CIO before I became the director of logistics was doing exactly what you're suggesting, Speaker. I literally found an area where I go, this is risk I can take. Let me find an acquisition pathway that allows me to build a prototype, and once that prototype is proven, I want to scale, and I want to scale really fast. I don't want to drop it into a decade-long acquisition pathway that literally will end up dying on the vine. So to the extent to which we can continue to do this and inform the best-of-breed hardware and software capability to provide this capability to the nation, I think, and I'll finish here, we will make sure that we secure decision advantage for the United States of America. I think that's where we are. If we keep getting in each other's ways and putting in hurdles and obstacles, we will not get through and we'll put at risk this nation. That's how strongly I feel about this.
I will tell everybody here, having left Congress, that it looks partisan at times, but there are a couple things that united. I created a select committee when it came to AI. Now, MIT teaches a course to all the generals in our military on AI and quantum. Whoever captures that first has an advantage, right? So everybody plays. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I took like 10 members to MIT and had them teach a course to Congress, because I think we know about this much about everything. But before someone did legislation, they'd all know. And I'd bring the entire Congress together and we'd have these talks. And so we created a bipartisan group like this. And what I found, where we're thinking, how do we solve the military and everything else? The number one question we have is, how can we help a constituent without having to send a form in the mail and wait till it comes back till we can solve the problem? UPS can do it, can it not? I will tell you, despite whoever is in office right now, this is the window, if you are somehow dealing with government, that I think they are very open to taking some already appropriated dollars and reappropriate it in a manner that they think could be more efficient.
Yeah.
And so that's why I kind of would ask you, pick a problem you have today that you wish for in the future you can solve in a way that if you had other data or other decision making, that this might be able to be enhanced, because I believe you've got an opportunity on both sides of the aisle that people see this is good, they got to build trust with it, but they're willing to take some current money because they think it could save them in the future.
You know, I think we've been incredibly fortunate to have some of those investments made.
Now, you just got a lot of money.
The
so
recent,
you're okay.
I mean, we might not be in the space where we have to ask for it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think one of the,
You might be able to give some back.
I don't know. Let's see. One of the problem sets that we're working through, and we have, I think, come a long way with the anomaly detection algorithms along the southwest border for a number of business use cases, and we completely understand it's not one algorithm, right? It's like layers of algorithms for that anomaly detection. And the persistent challenge that we have is, and again, I'm not an IT professional, and you know, my IT department cringes probably when I try to sound like I am, but when you think about like homogeneous cargo loads, right, the patterns change like frequently. So finding anomalies, and you know, we looked at it where we were looking for like hard objects as the anomalies. Well, there's only so many, like, you know, if you're looking for a firearm, you know, generally what a firearm, you can detect that. When you're looking for narcotics concealment methods, it's very different. And having in mixed loads, you know, some of the models looking at it, you know, we can't wind up with 75% of the commercial conveyances getting referred. So really narrowing down how to and I'm sure it exists. I'm sure the opportunity is out there. We just haven't quite gotten there yet. But to make investments really with, you know, the industry, and I think the labs, I think we've done a lot of work with DHS S&T as well, is finding that sweet spot for those, you know, those ever-changing patterns in, you know, cargo. And, you know, I don't think it's too far off. I think we're going to get there.
Mm. All right, Chief, technology officer, Greg. I'm put you on the spot there.
Okay.
Let's play into the future, short term, long term. Here you are with one of the leading labs in the world. What's your dream that some of the challenges that it takes to solve some of the problems for the future?
Well, I think one of them is like the data wrangling we talked about. But I think what we really want to get to is just speed and agility, right? And I think part of that brings, bring the data together. You were talking about sort of like acquisition, things like that, speed,
How tough is acquisitions for you?
I think it's tough from a different perspective. And I'm sure somebody in the audience is involved with FedRAMP. So don't mean to offend anybody in the audience who's doing FedRAMP. But one of the things we're looking at now that was almost okay a year or two or three ago, which is when we want to bring on a service that we run outside of our fence line, and we go through all the appropriate checks and balances, accreditations on that, and there's this FedRAMP process. Understand why that's there. A lot of goodness with that, but and your mileage will vary. But it takes us at the lab probably about 24 months, about 2 years, to talk with a vendor that actually has a solution. And it's a little bit different with C3. Will run it on some of your own ecosystem, but anybody that's running software as a service, we could engage and actually see something that's promising that could save us time, energy, and increase sort of time to science. But we can't really put it into play for like 24 months.
So when you pick something out, by the time you get there, you're talking 2-3 years?
Yes, and that was almost
the world will pass you
tolerable a couple years ago. But what's happened with AI is it's increased like the expectation of turnaround by at least an order of magnitude, if not more. So now when the same people that would have said, well, okay, if it's going to take me another year to get that thing out, I can kind of accept that. Now it's like, well, no, I need it next Wednesday, right? So this whole process for not just Lawrence Livermore, but other places that count on FedRAMP, we have to do something different. There's something we need to invest where we can bring on the vendors that rise to the top and are doing great things with AI that's going to improve everybody's lives. We have to get them vetted more quickly to onboard them. Otherwise, we're going to, you lose out on the race. So something has to happen there. And when I talk to some people, they're like, well, if we can get it down and do a real process improvement and get it from 24 months to 23 months, we'll claim victory. I'm like, no, you have to get it from 24 months to like 30 days, 45 days. That's the type of improvement we're looking at. So can you solve that one for me?
I could if I could just have one executive order.
Just one.
I'd be king for a day, yes. We really look to the military. The history is always, you build to the last war. And we watched our adversaries, for really the first time, advancing in places we haven't seen before. And sometimes when you're the biggest, it slows you down when the others are going. What do you dream of in the future that AI can help from a perspective when it comes? I mean, just the supply chain, we have found, looking at other conflicts around the world, this is where we're exceptional. And it gives us a true advantage.
I think supply chain's a big one. Let me go a slight degree off that and talk about digital twinning powered by AI. So imagine, Diane and Greg have talked, imagine a digital twin to run, Diane, complex border flows that could simulate this at scale on demand. Imagine these mission excursions that you do, Greg, over in Lawrence Livermore, right? These complex mission excursions on demand. And in our world, I said it earlier, Speaker, it's modeling weapon systems and capabilities ahead of conflict, right? At scale and on demand. So for example, let's just go with a recent, the President of the United States gave the execute order to Global Strike to launch B-2s out of the continental US. Now, I don't want to get into a political fight but the bottom line is, what most Americans don't realize is our ability to do global reach, to put a target at risk anywhere on the planet, is something that is uniquely American. If we lose that capability, we will be a toothless tiger, literally. Any comment we make about what we're going to do, people will scoff and laugh at our face. So our ability to use AI to actually reinforce our ability to global reach, not just to strike, but global reach, where there might be a humanitarian crisis, Speaker, that you saw on your watch, where we have to go out and provide the kinds of care that is needed across the globe. If we don't understand our capacity, so let's just go back to real quickly the example. Nobody heard about the tanker fleet. You hear bits and pieces, 30 to 52 tankers stationed around the world to make sure we got those B-2 bombers into the Middle East and then returned back to whatever location they recovered to. The reality is that fleet is about anywhere from, you can argue, 60 to 70% mission capable. 60 to 70%. That's not good enough. There is no fighter, no cargo, no bomber aircraft that can move across the globe from the United States into anywhere around the world without a tanker. So if we don't understand our tanker capacity, we're in trouble. And if we don't understand what would happen if we have to, for God forbid, if we'd have to fight and defend this nation from two fronts, if we don't understand that, and we don't use AI to actually help us understand that, we are going to be in trouble. And I used that phrase earlier, and I just want to reinforce it again. The United States has decision advantage. It's because of the talent in this room and the people that we represent back at our companies. We have decision advantage. The challenge is, Speaker, how do we work together to make sure we accelerate that decision advantage and what it takes to get after gaps? We talked about acquisition pathways. Another one is access to data. I think the other thing that we have to get at big time is this. We talked about trust already. So we talked about three of the big hurdles that we have to get after, or this nation is going to be in trouble. And I don't want to be the guy on the gray horse, just kind of sitting around with the playing Eeyore, but this is real. And I think this community understands it. And what's so exciting is you brought your talent to bear to help us get after that. That's what I would say, Speaker, I look at in the future is we will see digital twinning powered by AI that allows us to do the kind of things that we're talking about. We have to have that. I'm not talking in the next 2 years. It's got to happen very fast in the next year. And you see it. Again, C3AI is doing a lot of it. We're partnering with a bunch of partners, but this has to happen in the future in a room full of people that is running the nation's hardest problems across the federal government, running all the excursions across the government, whether you're in Diane's world, or whether you're at the labs, or whether you're sitting in defense. We all have to do this exceptionally well, or our adversaries, to your point, are actually looking to unseat us from the gold medal stanchion. Over?
Building on that, real quickly, it's about credibility, right? And we have the labs that are responsible for nuclear stockpile, certifying, modernizing, and adversaries have to know that we're employing the best tools to increase the cycle there and have the credible threat going on.
You're exactly right.
I would tell you this from one perspective too, the hope I have on AI. I think some of the division we have in our nation, I'd say from both sides, they haven't solved problems. So people are looking around. And then we have utilized problems and issues to discredit the other one. The one thing about AI, it's driven to solve problems and it's based upon data. And lots of times I found that there's a couple books. I'm not Oprah, but I always give this recommended reading, okay? I would say 3 books I always like people to read. I like people to read Simon Sinek, Starts With Why. Mm-hmm. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, okay? I love Grit, Angela Duckworth. The number one attribute of whether you'll be successful is perseverance. I had to go 15 rounds to be speaker. I haven't done that since the Civil War. So, the third one is Adam Grant, Think Again. And this is where I hope policymakers get it. So we all have our opinions, but we have our opinions based upon life experience and knowledge. But what if you only have a 0.25% of that knowledge and you're given all of the knowledge? You're not changing your opinion. You have a more informed answer. And that's where I think it could help unite the nation. You've got a very difficult job. You got to make sure commerce is coming. The border is not the same border all across the country. Some cartels are just trafficking people. You want to make sure the children are safe. Some are bringing drugs. Some people just have a desire for a better world. And you got to handle all of that. And the people on the front line have got to make a decision. So that allows it. So in this final question, my hope as we go through this new generation of AI, what is your final takeaway here that you think, from the perspective of what it's doing today and what it will do in the future, of what your desire to make it happen?
There's quite a bit, actually. Let me
Yeah.
try and narrow that down. I think, again, it's about having a workforce. And I'll tell you one challenge with any technology or system, AI that we roll out is, one, convincing our workforce that we still need them. We're not trying to replace them or automate, away from that human element, and we need them. But I think, CBP is still a relatively young agency, and we were kind of built on a culture of change. That's what it feels like, and we hope not to lose that in anytime soon. I think looking at kind of our workforce today, the building requirements comes at an easier kind of pace, and we get closer to moving at the speed of mission. I think Greg made just an excellent point there, because and you caught on, right? 2 years down the road, is it really even the same threat that you're trying
world
to
changes.
respond to? And we have some, threats that remain pretty consistent. The methodologies sometimes change, but tackling the same thing. But that we have a frontline workforce that can make the decisions, and be fully informed. And it's never a guessing game what we do. We never want to guess to get something. It doesn't benefit us. To not be completely, invested in that intelligence framework and providing the best information possible to our front line. But I think, again, every day that we're just having a more informed frontline workforce, and again, whether it's our import specialists, our CBP officers, our agriculture specialists, and I didn't mention my colleagues in the Border Patrol. I think what they're doing with AI, the smart border wall technology is absolutely incredible.
And what they do, they put a pole out, they have a drone sitting there, so they go follow where it is. They could have the recording if somebody drops a drug or somebody has a person out save their lives. But you can utilize staffing better that you go center because you have hundreds of thousands of miles.
And I think it's really about mitigating the threats we see today, because the next threats are immediate. Our adversaries are not waiting for us, to figure out how to resolve this one. They're down the road. I think, counter UAS, a huge priority for Customs and Border Protection, and great partnership with the Department of Defense, certainly over the last several months. So I think, again, the information at, the
utilization
fingertips.
of greater working together on all platforms.
Yep.
All right, final word, Greg and Major General.
Well, building on that, I think getting the workforce educated so there's not this cultural fear that everybody's going to go away.
against it.
Just kind of try to explain it. Get everybody like from a handsaw to like a power saw. It's a different tool, but you're still going to be there and you're going to be able to employ it to do magical things going forward.
Yeah, I'll stay right there. It's not AI versus people. To Diane and Greg's point, it's AI with people. I look forward to a world where people on the edge are very comfortable with AI agents doing, I'll call it shallow work. AI can do a whole bunch of deep work, but we should not tolerate doing shallow work on the edge, right? So in the maintenance business, can an AI agent take care of all the observation? Is this safe for maintenance? Is this, and then we free up the maintainer to do troubleshooting, high-end troubleshooting. And then the AI agent can come in alongside and do some troubleshooting. If we train it right, we train the model right, the AI agent can do that as well. It's getting our people to the place where they're very comfortable. Excuse me. We got a long way to go to get to, I'm a Star Wars nut, to get to RTD2 and BB-8. From where we are with just using ChatGPT as a Google engine, right? All the way to the place where we're very comfortable with AI agents doing work right alongside us. I think that's what I look forward to. You see it happening, but we are in the while you're advanced, Greg, the vast majority of us are in the very nascent stages of getting comfortable with AI. I don't know what your circle looks like, but that's certainly my circle of folks who go, what is this stuff? They represent the video that we saw earlier. And so I think that's what I look forward to, Speaker, is a world where we're getting increasingly more comfortable with AI agents working right alongside us, doing, my words, the shallow work, while we focus on the deep thinking and the deep work that has to be done.
Can I do one thing before I think? Can I challenge all of you? First, thank you for being here. Thank you for having an interest in this. And I don't want to pre-assume all the occupations that you're in, but will you push the envelope? We can't wait 2 years to have a new program. But just as the rules say it, push it. Because I think as a nation, I know we're in the beginning with an AI, but it can do a lot of different things for us. I know people are afraid it's going to take your job. I don't think it is. I think it's going to elevate in different places. It's going to make us more efficient, but it's going to make government a more accountable and efficient manner as well. And I think in a much more competitive world, it will be a reshaping for America. And I do think having decisions based more on pure data and knowledge and communicating can unite the nation a little better too. So I thank you for the time. And Diane, Greg, and Major General, thank you for spending the time with us today as well. Appreciate it.